Okay, so have you ever, like, been through a big change yourself, and suddenly you're hit with this wave of, oh my gosh, how's my kid going to handle this?
It's like that moment when you realize, wait, I'm not the only one going through this.
Exactly. And thankfully, we've got some awesome resources on this very topic. Looks like someone out there is about to become their kid's change navigating superhero.
I love it. It always impresses me the parents who are like proactively seeking out these strategies. It makes such a difference understanding even just a little the psychology behind how kids process change.
Totally. And speaking of understanding, one of the tips in this 5 tips article really jumped out at me. It's prepare them in advance,
Right.
which, I mean, seems pretty obvious on the surface,
Yeah, sure.
but I have a feeling there's a whole lot more to it than just, dropping a, hey, by the way, things are changing soon kind of bomb. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. See, kids, they thrive on routine, right? Which is something we as adults, we kind of forget sometimes because let's face it, our lives can be so unpredictable. But for kids, even a small change, it can feel huge, like an earthquake. Giving them that heads up, even if it seems totally insignificant to us, it gives them that time to start processing.
Yeah,
It reduces that anxiety because it's not sprung on them out of nowhere, right?
it is true.
And now, this doesn't magically make all their feelings about the change disappear, but what it does do is it lets you validate those
Oh, I
feelings.
like that.
You're acknowledging their reality instead of just dismissing it.
You know what this reminds me of? It's like when I know I have a trip coming up, and even if it's weeks away, just the simple act of, like, making packing lists,
Yeah.
getting ahead of it,
Yes.
it calms my nerves.
Exactly. And you know what? That ties in beautifully to the next big point the source emphasizes, which is the power of routines.
Okay.
Think of routines like that comforting hug, right?
Yeah.
That safe haven in the middle of all the chaos. That's what makes them so important for kids, especially during times of transition.
And what I love is the 5 tip source. It doesn't say, okay, eliminate all change. It's really about strategically, choosing which things to keep consistent.
Exactly. It's about providing those anchors of familiarity. It's like imagine a boat in a storm, right? The anchor, it's not stopping the storm,
Right.
right? But what
Yeah.
it is doing is it's providing stability.
Right.
That point of reference that keeps the boat from completely being tossed about. Routines, they're like that anchor for kids.
Such a good visual.
Yeah.
Okay, another point the source mentions, and it's one that I think resonates but can feel so hard.
Hmm.
It's just, being patient,
Oh, yeah.
which, again, easier said than done when you're in the thick of it with a kiddo who's really resisting a change.
Absolutely. It requires a real conscious shift in how we think about it. Like instead of expecting kids to just flip a switch and get over it, we need to like reframe that.
Yeah.
Adjustment, it takes time, right?
It does.
Every kid processes things in their own way at their own speed.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole idea of validation comes in. So instead of, just brushing their feelings aside, we acknowledge them. We say things like, hey, I see that you're feeling sad about this change, and you know what? It's okay to be sad. When we validate, we're not trying to fix their feelings. We're
Yeah.
just honoring their experience.
That makes so much sense. And speaking of honoring their experience, the 5 tips article, it suggests encouraging open communication,
Yeah.
which basically means giving your child that safe space to share everything they're feeling, worries, excitement, the whole shebang, without, like,
Yeah.
judgment.
Yes. Creating that safe space is huge because it shows kids that their emotions, they matter, that they're being heard, and that you're a steady presence, someone they can always rely on. Think about it. When someone really listens to us, like without interrupting or trying to fix things, how much lighter do we feel?
Oh, it's true.
Kids need that too.
So true. Okay, and then lastly, the 5 tip source. It really emphasizes reassurance.
Mm-hmm.
And again, another one of those that sounds, amazing in theory, but when you're in the trenches, you're like, okay, but what does that actually look like?
It's about being that steadfast source of support. You're that unwavering rock in their world. And it's not about like sugarcoating the change or pretending everything's perfect. It's about reminding them of their own inner strength, their resilience. You might say something like, hey, remember when you were learning to ride your bike? It was tough at first, and you fell a couple times. But you were so brave. You kept practicing, and look at you now. I know this change feels hard right now, but I also know how strong you are. And we're going to get through this together.
That is such a good example. So basically, we've gone from this kind of simple list of tips to a much deeper understanding of why these strategies work, right? Like
Mm.
preparing for the emotional impact, holding on to routines as those anchors, and just, being that listening ear, that reassuring presence.
Absolutely. As you go through this change with your child, here's something to think about. What message about resilience can you help them build through this?
Ooh,
How can you empower them to not just like cope with change, but to really grow from it?
that is such a good question. Wow, you've given us so much to think about today. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us.
Of course, it's always a pleasure.
Always great to chat.